a lot of these last sections are repeated, and if you study some of these other courses or things that are offered, some of this stuff skipped because, they consider it just a repetition of what was said previously. But I like to lay out each module, take a look at it. Even if I'm repeating what's being said, I think it's really important because you can never go wrong in learning the same thing twice. So let's take a look here. To evaluate a writer's reasoning, we should take into consideration the evaluation of the assumptions that the writer makes. We've taken a look at this. We want to evaluate and examine the evidence the writer uses. We want to take a look at that evidence. Is this evidence support? Does it make any sense? Does it, is it within the topic? Is it something that really supports what the writer's trying to say? Let me give you guys a little bit of insight into my own experience. So when I was in college, I used to write papers and be like, hey, here's a quote. This is a great quote. And what I'd do was I'd take that quote and almost make an outline of quotes saying these are going to be really good and these are going to make my paper excellent. But what you need to remember as a writer is you have your ideas. It's influenced by the sources you use and what you want to say, but it's your idea. So you should find quotes that support what you say, and you shouldn't try to find quotes and write around them, no? And I'll talk about this later, but when a person gives off, say it has a citation here, puts it in their paper, that citation should not stand alone. Examining the evidence the writer uses. Now, there's a piece of evidence taken from a source, it's put in the paper. Maybe let's say that evidence is an external source in this case. Now I want to present that idea. I want to put the source in, then I want to explain that idea. All right, so this is all put in a sandwich, a quote sandwich. You got two pieces of bread, and in the middle you've got the meat, which is the quote. But to explain what I was saying a minute ago, that quote should support what you say. Matter of fact, when I'm reading papers, I read the whole paper. When I see a quote, I skip that quote sometimes. And then I finish what the student has to say. And then I go back and reread the paper, looking at that quote as supporting evidence. So that quote, that citation, should be used to support what you say. You also want to look for fallacies in the writer's reasoning. Logic that doesn't make sense, inconsistencies, things that may not seem right. You also want to review the writer's logic. And this we've looked at already, but the flow, sequence of ideas, consistency, coherence. How does that start at the beginning? Does it keep going in a logical way? You're going to be reading essays by people in different journals, different newspaper articles, etc. Maybe even other students' papers. And you're going to say, hey, this doesn't flow very well. There's no thesis statement. There's no sequence of ideas. Now, that might be okay for that specific purpose because that person's writing, say you're writing a newspaper article, when you read a newspaper article, your eyes kind of go bam, bam, bam. You look over the newspaper article and you say, well, am I going to read this or am I not going to read this? A newspaper article is not going to have a thesis statement and it's not going to lay out all its points like that. It's going to create like a rubric. It's going to go from the most important facts and then it's going to kind of funnel down into the least important facts. And at the end, it may not even have a conclusion. So, not every source is going to do this, but when you write, when you put this paper together, these are things that you want to think about, okay? You want to evaluate the person's reasoning, you want to evaluate your own reasoning. So thinking about the flow, sequence of ideas, and consistency, and coherence are something that makes for a good paper.